Hi guys, I hope you'll stick around with me today while I paint these rosettes in a teacup. Today I'm using my SeimiArt and Sonnet watercolors, my size 6 round Intuition brush by Artegria. I have my Meeden watercolor palette, 2 jars of water, one for rinsing my dirty brushes and the other for painting. I have a clean cloth for dabbing any mistakes or puddles, and today I'm using a 1.5-ish by 2.5-ish cut of my B Paper Company 300 GSM watercolor paper. Let's get started. So I'm going to start just by lightly sketching in my teacup. I usually like to have a pedestal style. So I make my little rounded bowl and then just a basic pedestal. And then my handle, I like to do a little curly handle. Okay. Then I like to just lightly erase that away. Just lightly. And I try to do that very, very lightly. I have before erased far too much away and created problems for myself. And so for this, I think what I'll do is maybe some roses. Okay, and how I want to do these roses, because I want to keep this quite simple, is I'm just going to start with some alternating crescents, kind of not touching them to each other necessarily. It's okay if they touch somewhat. And I kind of want to maybe pack these roses in here. I'm kind of tilting them upward. You'll notice that inner swirl kind of goes upward because I do want these to be kind of directional. And then I need to hurry because I want to go ahead and start brushing some water before these get too dry. So I've rinsed off my brush. I'm dragging most of that water off on the side. And then I'm just going to go in here and touch these petals that I've brushed in. Just going to start touching that with water. And not everywhere, but just to loosen this up. Okay. And then remembering that as you work, if you've had an area that's gotten a bit dry and you've brushed that with some water to kind of loosen that and pull some of the pigment out, if it kind of wasn't cooperative at first, you can let that additional water that you've brushed in kind of sit there for a moment and then go brush at it again with your brush. It will pull or push some of that pigment out. So, that's a good thing to keep in mind. Sometimes working with so many, trying to do so many of these at a time, that can be the disadvantage because it can dry so quickly and then they don't soften up quite as much. So just adding a couple more little buds here, maybe. Now these I expect to maybe soften up and bleed quite a bit more because I've done them while I'm adding this water while they're still a bit wetter. So I'm actually trying to watch that a little because then I don't want my roses to not be so cohesive. What I want to do is use my clean water and first outline and fill the inside of this teacup with a little bit of water. And you can see I probably could have rinsed my brush a bit better. There's a bit of a tinge of pink in here, which I am not going to worry about at all because if this were a white cup, some of that rosy kind of color could be reflected in this anyway, especially if it's a glossy china. So Not worried about that. Making sure this left side is quite wetted. And now I'm going in with a touch of this Payne's Gray. Oh, or more than a touch. So I'm just rinsing my brush and dragging that off. And what I'll do is I'll push this around. So especially up under these flowers, up under these roses where there would be more shadow. On this left side is where my shadow is. And then just a blend. And leaving some of it white so that I have maybe some stronger highlights in there. And I want to blend this just a little more. It's just a little too much. Pull a little bit of this pigment down here. I like it. This handle would have a bit more shadow on these curves. So then while that's drying, I'll take some of my olive green. You could use a tree green for this, but olive is just what I like. I just like the tones of it. And start brushing in some leaves. These are rose leaves, so you know they're going to be kind of jaggedy. Maybe one coming out from under the handle. Okay, and then I like to kind of rinse and drag off some of that pigment, and then just go in with some background leaves. Some things kind of just in here, maybe even a bit of this darker oof. So I'm going to go back and catch that real quick before it becomes a problem. Even though really, you know, some green in that's not too big of a deal either. Certainly not a deal breaker and nothing to get upset over. Okay. And then just trying to make sure I have some stems in there. Well, oof. Sometimes you can't learn. Sometimes I can't learn. I think what I'll do there just to kind of balance that little tone is drop a little pink in there, that Madder Lake. Oh yeah, I like that. And just kind of give that a little tiny blend with a little bit of a damp brush. Not too much, but just enough. Okay, I love that. I want to take and just add a little bit of a shadow here, and so I'm just going to go at the bottom of this. I'm going to go a little bit up behind and beside that pedestal. And I'm going to go to the right with this shadow. Okay, and just kind of rinse that, drag it off. Okay, I like it. I'm not sure I love this, maybe too much shadow over there. And I feel like maybe just a tiny bit more of shadow here to kind of balance that I kind of lost some of that pedestal over to the side, so over on that right side. I like that. I might just bring that, a little bit of that right here, maybe right there, maybe a little bit in these little curves. I want to go in and soften those just a little. And so the way I do that without introducing too much water is really rinse off and blot my brush a little bit. And then I just kind of brush that. It gives a nice shadow effect by just kind of squiggling the bristles a little like that. It's almost like you can see the kind of the streaks of light or streaks of, you know, reflection in that. Did get quite messy there at the bottom. That pedestal is not satisfying me. See what I can do about that. Maybe just, there we go. There we go. That may not be perfect, but that works for me. That totally works for me. Okay, and I feel like there should be a little shadow up here just because of those flowers. And then maybe a tiny, tiny bit of shadow right here. Maybe a little in there. May have done that a little too out in the space of the handle. So let's see if I can kind of scrub that out and go inside a little bit, just slightly to the left. Okay. And again, for me, not really a deal breaker. I've come to realize there just aren't that many deal breakers in my art. I mean, there are, don't get me wrong, I throw plenty of art away. But, you know, these little things where I could just nitpick that to death, I just really try not to. Just going to blend this in just a little and then not worry about it. I like it. It's fine. Okay. Super fun. That was so enjoyable. Oh my gosh. And how cute. What a great little gift tag. Easy, easy. Done in pretty much a snap, and certainly you could add so much more to this. You could go in, you know, you could give the roses more detail, you could add a few veins on those leaves, but for me, I'm going to call this finished. Punch a hole in the corner and tie ribbon to it. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and as always, happy painting!